If you ask, like pretty much anyone on the street, they will probably tell you that human rights and, the rule of law were basically born in the year 1215.
Right, with King John of England.
Exactly, with King John and the Magna Carta. We're all taught in school that this was the foundational concrete of modern democracy.
Yeah, the ultimate origin story.
Right. But what if the real foundation of universal human equality was actually laid on an entirely different continent, like almost 1,000 years earlier? Welcome to today's deep dive.
It's honestly a premise that just forces you to completely re-examine all those historical narratives you grew up with.
It really does.
Because today, we aren't just looking at a timeline of old documents. We are investigating a really profound structural difference in human governance.
But he says what, exactly?
Well, it's the difference between a government that simply agrees not to oppress you and a government that is actively obligated to help you thrive.
Wow, okay. And the sources we're looking at today tackle that exact difference head on. Our mission here is to trace the true historical roots of equality.
Right.
And we want to explore how these ancient frameworks are actually being invoked to solve today's really complex social disparities. We are contrasting the traditional Western narrative of the 1215 Magna Carta with this ancient 4th century text from India called the Arthashastra.
And ultimately, we're exploring an incredibly progressive, optimistic vision for the future, which is something called a Neo-Magna Carta.
Which is an essential conversation for you to hear in the modern era.
Yeah.
Because, the rights that govern your life right now are under immense pressure from economic disparity and systemic inequality.
For sure. And understanding where those rights actually came from is really the first step in figuring out where they need to go next.
Right. So here's where it gets really interesting. This entire reevaluation was sparked by some recent remarks from the Chief Justice of India, Surya Kant.
Oh, yeah. That was at the St. Petersburg International Legal Forum, right?
Exactly, the 60th St. Petersburg International Legal Forum. And he suggested that the foundational value of equality wasn't actually laid by English barons, but rather in the Indian subcontinent.
8 whole centuries before the Magna Carta was ever drafted.
Yeah, it's a massive claim.
It is a formidable claim. But, to truly grasp why the Chief Justice makes that comparison and why it actually matters to your own civic life, we first have to sort of demystify the Magna Carta itself.
We have to tear down the myth a bit.
Exactly. We need to strip away the romanticism and look at the gritty reality of what actually happened in 1215.
Okay, let's do exactly that, because the traditional story paints the Magna Carta as this glorious dawn of liberty for the common man.
Right, like everyone was suddenly free.
Yeah, but looking at the historical context in our sources, it was essentially just a treaty. It was drawn up by British barons who were just totally fed up with King John's heavy taxation.
Their goal wasn't universal freedom at all.
No, not even close. Their goal was to protect their own vast property, their feudal liberties, and their church assets from royal encroachment.
That context is so crucial because the great mass of people at the time, the peasants who were known as the villains, they had absolutely no say in this document.
They weren't even invited to the table.
Not at all. The barons were not fighting for the rights of the serfs working their lands. They were fighting to secure their own dynastic wealth.
So it wasn't really a people's champion document at first.
Far from it.
It sounds more like a corporate merger agreement between a CEO and the board of directors, where the board is just trying to protect their own assets rather than looking out for the entry-level employees.
That's close, but you have to remember that in 1215, the board of directors literally had their own private armies.
Oh, right.
This wasn't just boardroom politics. The threat of full-blown civil war was absolutely imminent in England. The barons were armed, they were angry, and they were backing the king into a corner at Runnymede.
But despite the selfish motivations behind it, the source material highlights that the Magna Carta did inadvertently create a permanent shift in how power operates, right?
It did, yeah. Accidentally, but it did.
Because looking at the text, Clause 61 jumps out immediately. It essentially creates a medieval oversight committee.
Yes, the famous Clause 61.
It established a council of 25 barons to monitor the king and basically force him to observe the peace. King John must have been furious about that.
Oh, he was completely apoplectic. He famously exclaimed, "They have given me 5 and 20 over kings."
I mean, you can kind of hear the outrage in that quote.
Totally. And he actually appealed to the Pope to have the document annulled almost immediately.
Wait, really? Did it work?
Well, sort of initially. But the damage to absolute monarchy was already done. Clause 61 planted this revolutionary precedent that the sovereign monarch is subject to the law.
So that was the initial crack in the armor of absolute power.
Exactly. And over the following centuries, later generations of English people basically took that elite property dispute, expanded its meaning, and invoked it to establish the broader rule of law for free men.
Okay, so if the Magna Carta originally only protected the property and power of the elite, where in history do we first see a government legally obligated to protect the general populace?
Right, the real turning point.
Yeah. For that, we have to rewind 8 centuries, leave Europe entirely, and look at the Arthashastra.
And this is where we really examine Chief Justice Surya Kant's primary argument.
Right. Tell us about the Arthashastra.
So it's this comprehensive Sanskrit treatise on statecraft, economic policy, and military strategy. It was written in the 4th century BCE by Kautilya.
And he was the chief strategist and advisor to the Mauryan emperor, Chandragupta Maurya, right?
Yes, exactly.
And the Mauryan Empire was massive. It covered most of the Indian subcontinent. So to run an empire that large and that diverse, Kautilya couldn't just rely on abstract philosophy.
No, he had to be incredibly pragmatic.
He had to deal with real logistics.
Precisely. And what's fascinating here is how Kautilya viewed the role of the state. He argued that the power of a ruler was entirely derived from the welfare of the people.
Not from divine right.
Nope. In the Arthashastra, equality before the law wasn't a passive concept. It demanded substantive justice.
Meaning what in practice?
Well, Kautilya explicitly mandated that the state must provide maintenance to orphans, the elderly, the sick, and helpless pregnant women.
Wow. Think about your own life today. If you are legally allowed to buy a house, but a bank redlines your neighborhood, or rapid inflation prices you out entirely, that right to property is practically invisible to you.
It exists on paper, but not in your reality.
Exactly. That's the exact gap the Arthashastra was trying to close over 2 millennia ago.
That is the perfect way to frame the difference between procedural law and substantive justice.
The Magna Carta gave us procedural law.
Right. Real the rules of the game that say the king can't just take the baron's land without a process. But the Arthashastra focused on the substantive reality of the citizen.
It's about what the citizen actually experiences.
Yes. Kautilya's framework asserted that if a citizen is starving or lacks physical security, the state has fundamentally failed in its legal duty. It doesn't matter what the laws say on paper.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's basically the difference between having the recipe for a cake and actually getting to eat the cake.
I love that analogy.
The Magna Carta says the king can't steal your recipe.
Right.
But the Arthashastra says the state has to make sure you have access to flour, sugar, and an oven so you can actually bake it.
And that is why Chief Justice Surya Kant views the Arthashastra as laying the foundational value for civilization.
It recognized the human dignity requires tangible material support.
Exactly. Not just freedom from royal interference.
But there is a massive leap between Kautilya's ancient statecraft and ensuring equal rights in the year 2026.
A very big leap.
Which brings us to the core friction point in our sources today. How do these ancient principles translate when faced with the glaring, entrenched realities of the modern world?
This is where we transition from historical theory to the immediate struggles of global governance. Because in his address, Chief Justice Surya Kant issued a very stark warning.
What did he say?
He stated that access to law cannot be reduced to hollow statutory declarations.
Hollow statutory declarations, meaning rights that are proudly written into a constitution, but do absolutely nothing to change the daily suffering of marginalized people.
Precisely. If we look at the Indian Constitution, for example, it is a magnificent document. I mean, it was drafted after centuries of brutal colonial rule.
Right.
And it boldly promises fundamental rights. Things like equality before the law, life with dignity, equal justice.
But as the Chief Justice notes, the true challenge is never in the drafting, is it?
No, it is in the delivery.
So what does this all mean? It's easy to promise equality in a constitution, but when the starting line is drawn in completely different places due to colonialism or extreme poverty, aren't those legal promises essentially hollow for the marginalized?
They absolutely can be. And the hurdles to delivering that justice are staggering, especially in the global East and South.
What kind of hurdles are the sources talking about?
Well, they outline massive systemic barriers. Things like immense geographical distances. Someone might live a multi-day journey from the nearest legal aid.
Wow, yeah. That makes accessing a court almost impossible.
Exactly. Then you have deep economic disadvantages where affording representation is just out of the question.
And language barriers, right?
Oh, a huge issue. There are language barriers where citizens literally cannot even read the legal summons sent to them.
Not to mention the historical hangover of colonialism.
Right. Many of these nations are still actively constructing the basic civic institutions required to even process these rights.
So true justice in this context requires the active dismantling of systemic barriers.
Definitely. If a modern state just declares everyone is equal now and then walks away, they are just cementing the historical inequalities into place.
So it means you cannot have substantive justice without building the roads to the courthouse, subsidizing the legal representation, and making sure the legal code is translated into indigenous languages.
Yes. We are still fighting to institutionalize Kautilya's demand for tangible rights.
It is an ongoing, often grueling battle. But the overarching narrative of these sources isn't one of despair, is it?
Not at all. In fact, if we connect this to the bigger picture, humanity has a remarkable track record of evolving past its darkest eras.
We always seem to find a way forward.
We do. The historical arc we are tracing leads directly into a profoundly optimistic vision for the future of global rights.
And that brings us to the concept of the Neo-Magna Carta.
Yes, a really fascinating concept.
And the context for this is vital. Our sources argue that humanity has evolved past the Renaissance, past the Industrial Revolution, and past what the text describes as the bitter fruits of capitalism, communism, fascism, and colonialism.
Right, all those rigid systems.
Exactly. We are standing in a new century, and our collective social outlook has to elevate to match our technological and societal integration.
The underlying premise here is that the fanaticism of those rigid isms caused immense global trauma.
Yeah, culminating in the horrors of the world wars and, frankly, severe ecological degradation.
So a new mindset is required, one based on cardinal human values. The source material refers to this as a neo-humanistic approach.
And that's heavily influenced by Prout, right?
Yep.
The progressive utilization theory.
Yes, exactly.
Let's define those terms for a second, because they are basically the engine of this Neo-Magna Carta. Neo-humanism, as I understand it from the text, is the idea of extending the spirit of humanism beyond just human beings.
Right, to encompass love and legal respect for all living beings.
Plants and animals included. And Prout is a socioeconomic theory designed to maximize the utilization and rational distribution of all earthly resources.
Exactly. Moving past the perceived failures of both pure capitalism and state communism.
That's a huge shift.
It is. Prout argues that physical, mental, and spiritual resources shouldn't be hoarded or mismanaged. They have to be progressively utilized for the welfare of all.
And when you apply that neo-humanistic philosophy to a legal framework, you get the demands of the Neo-Magna Carta.
You do, and the demands in this new charter completely redefine the role of the state.
In what way?
Well, first, it states that complete security must be guaranteed to all plants and animals. Second, it demands that every single country must guarantee purchasing power to all its citizens.
Wait, guaranteeing purchasing power and extending security to plants and animals? That is a massive leap from King John's 25 barons protecting their land.
Oh, it's a totally different universe.
It's like upgrading from a basic flip phone straight to a quantum computer that also waters your garden. I mean, how do we practically prioritize cardinal human values without causing chaos?
Well, let's focus on that purchasing power point first. Guaranteeing purchasing power is a radical structural shift. It is the ultimate evolution of the Arthashastra's substantive justice.
Because just handing out money isn't enough.
Right. The Neo-Magna Carta recognizes that handing someone a meager welfare check isn't enough if inflation just destroys its value.
So true.
Guaranteeing a purchasing power means the state must structurally ensure that wages, the cost of essential goods, and resource distribution are balanced.
So that every human being has the actual mathematical capacity to meet their fundamental needs. Guaranteeing purchasing power fundamentally changes the definition of a government. You're shifting the state's job from just a referee who watches the market to an active provider ensuring the game isn't rigged from the start.
That's a great way to put it.
But extending security to plants and animals as well, like you said, that's a massive leap.
It is a massive leap, but a necessary one according to the neo-humanistic framework. We are realizing that human survival is inextricably linked to ecological survival.
It sounds like we're moving from a legal system built like a fortress designed simply to keep people away from your private property,
Right.
to a legal system built like an ecosystem.
Yeah.
You can't protect the humans inside the ecosystem without also fiercely protecting the soil, the water, and the broader economy they rely on.
That is a brilliant analogy. A fortress is isolated, but an ecosystem is interdependent.
Right.
And to support that ecosystem, the Neo-Magna Carta actually proposes 4 new fundamental constitutional rights.
And these are designed to cure those bitter fruits of past eras that we mentioned.
Exactly. The 4 rights are spiritual practice, or dharma, cultural legacy, education, and indigenous linguistic expression.
I really want to dig into why these 4 specifically, because at first glance, they seem almost more cultural than strictly legal.
They do, yeah.
Let's start with dharma. The text doesn't just mean a specific religion, right?
No, not at all. Dharma, in this context, refers to a deeper internal sense of moral duty and the inherent characteristic of a being.
So it's broader than religion.
Much broader. Guaranteeing the right to dharma means protecting the human pursuit of psychological and spiritual elevation. It frees people from being treated merely as economic cogs in an industrial machine.
I love that. And the rights to cultural legacy and indigenous linguistic expression, those seem like direct antidotes to colonialism.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if a colonial power's first move is to erase your language and your history, then a Neo-Magna Carta must explicitly enshrine your right to speak your mother tongue and maintain your heritage.
Yeah.
It directly heals that specific historical wound.
It does. But there is a crucial overriding mechanism built into this Neo-Magna Carta that we have to mention.
What's that?
The text explicitly states that if the practice of any of these rights, whether it's a cultural legacy or a spiritual practice, conflicts with cardinal human values,
Then what happens?
then that practice must be immediately curtailed.
So cardinal human values take precedence over everything else.
Everything.
So if a traditional cultural legacy involves discrimination or harming others or destroying the environment, the baseline value of universal well-being overrides it. The harmful practice is legally stopped.
Yes. It establishes an absolute floor for human dignity that no cultural or religious argument can pierce.
That is so powerful.
And what is truly striking about the source is its level of pragmatic optimism. It doesn't view Prout or this Neo-Magna Carta as a distant utopian pipe dream.
It sees it as achievable.
It suggests that as global integration continues, we are inevitably moving toward a world government with a world constitution. And this Neo-Magna Carta will serve as its cornerstone.
A world constitution based on the progressive utilization of all resources. That is an incredibly expansive vision.
It really is.
It kind of reframes how we should view the current friction and chaos in global politics right now.
Sure.
Maybe we aren't watching the system break down. Maybe we are just feeling the growing pains of a society trying to elevate its legal code to match its new interconnected reality.
History shows us that these transitions are never smooth. I mean, the barons at Runnymede in 1215 could never have conceptualized the inclusive, anti-colonial Indian constitution of the 20th century.
Not in a million years.
Just as we might struggle today to imagine the logistics of a functioning world government that legally guarantees purchasing power to every human and security to the natural world.
But the historical trajectory is clear.
Undeniably. From elite privileges to procedural law to substantive justice and now toward neo-humanism, we are moving toward a more expansive definition of rights.
And, to really make this world a better place for all to live with happiness and justice, the sources actually suggest diving deeper into this.
They do. They really want people to know more about neo-humanism and Prout.
Right. And they even encourage people to join a Prout study circle.
Yeah, or join their YouTube channels like the Sedvipras movement or the Next Human Project.
Yeah. To really firm up your understanding about scientific spirituality and this new ethics for future humanity.
Exactly. From a Prout perspective, it's all about keeping the outlook progressive and optimistic.
Which brings us perfectly to the core takeaway of today's journey. We started by looking for the deepest concrete in the foundation of human equality.
And we found Kautilya's 4th century Arthashastra.
Right, which demanded that rights be a lived reality, not just a royal promise. Then we examined the gritty reality of the 1215 Magna Carta.
An elite property dispute that accidentally birthed the rule of law.
Exactly. We navigated the modern post-colonial struggle to turn hollow statutory declarations into actual justice for marginalized communities.
And finally, we explored that Prautistic, neo-humanistic vision of a Neo-Magna Carta.
A legal ecosystem designed to guarantee purchasing power and ecological security.
It is a powerful reminder that the concept of justice is not a finished product. It is an evolving technology.
Absolutely. And for you listening right now, it is a reminder that the rights you rely on every single day to live your life are not fixed in stone.
They're really not.
They are the current iteration of an ongoing, thousands of years old evolution. You aren't just a passive observer in a society whose rules were finalized centuries ago. You are living through the next phase of that evolution right now. The foundation is still being actively poured.
Which raises an important adjacent question to leave you with today.
I love a good final question. Let's hear it.
If a future world constitution successfully adopts this neo-humanistic view, where we expand the circle of legal security beyond humans to guarantee the rights of plants and animals, how long will it be before we are forced to grant constitutional rights to advanced artificial intelligence?
Oh, wow.
Because if consciousness and ecosystem participation are the new baselines for rights, the next Magna Carta might have to protect minds that aren't even biological.
Now that is something to truly chew on as you go about your day. Thank you so much for taking this expansive journey with us. Keep questioning the foundations of the systems around you. Keep looking for the real structural supports in our society, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.